Welcome back. In a moment, we'll be looking at the dark side of the avocado trade. But first, here are some other stories to keep an eye on. A suicide car bombing and an assault by al-Shabaab militants has killed at least 18 people in the Somali capital, Mogadishu. The attack was on two neighbouring restaurants popular with affluent young Somalis. The gunmen were eventually killed by the security forces. In Tokyo, thousands of people have held overnight protests as Japan passed a controversial anti-terror law that critics say normalize over-the-top police surveillance. The government said the law, designed to target the planning of serious offences, is necessary to enhance security ahead of the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. EU roaming charges, the extra price you pay when using your phone in a foreign country, have been scrapped. The new rules mean that when travelling within the EU, customers will pay the same price they pay for their mobile phone usage as they do at home. Consumer groups have warned that users may still be subject to unexpected charges. Now, the next time you tuck into a pricey plate of avocado toast, spare a thought for the increasingly troubled history that brings it to your table. Also known as alligator pear or butterfruit, the versatile avocado is the latest champion of the Western craving for fashionable and healthy superfoods. But how many of us are aware of the dark side of its production? Demand is outstripping supply, and people and land are paying a high price. From kidnappings and violence against farmers in Mexico to water shortages in Chile, our love of the green stuff is having a huge impact on the world it grows in. Insight's Chloe Culpin reports.
Packed with vitamins and minerals, it's no surprise health experts and celebs are encouraging us to eat avocados in all sorts of ways.
This avocado chocolate mousse is incredible. It's so simple.
They're good for our blood, hair, cells, repairing our DNA, both when we eat them and apply them directly to our skin. But while they're benefiting people all over the world, they're also causing big problems where they're grown. In Mexico, swathes of pine forests are being destroyed to make way for avocados because they're so valuable. Vogue journalist Violet Henderson has been researching avocado production.
They're known as green gold, and it's Mexico's widely publicised tragedy that where there's money in Mexico, there are drug cartels circling. And they have got involved, they've been extorting from the growers there, kidnapping, extortions, and as a result, the growers have had to club together and get private militia to guard their land.
And avocados can only be grown in quite specific environments. They need huge amounts of water and high altitude. Chile, another leading avocado producer, is experiencing a mega drought. A climate study found rainfall had reduced significantly over the past decade. But still, farmers are trying to grow the crop, even though it isn't sustainable.
Avocado farmers considered the crop a 10-year cash crop, after which the land was made into a desert. It can sometimes take a couple of decades for the land to recover.
There are more than 50 avocado producing countries, but most have problems. Israel has ramped up its avocado production and is doing it sustainably. After good growing last year, it made around 60,000 metric tons, but that's compared with nearly 2 million from Mexico. And like Chile, Israel often suffers drought. New Zealand also grows avocados sustainably, but getting an avocado from that side of the world to Europe leaves a huge carbon footprint. Despite all this, some nutritionists recommend we eat an avocado per day, and many of us like to share our avocado intake online.
3 million new photos of avocados are uploaded every day. And also there's avocado memes with cute avocados running riot in cartoons across social media. It seems to have captured a zeitgeist.
But as we tuck into a brunch at a trendy restaurant, we should question whether our need for the green gold is worth the impact it's having on the environment and avocado producers. Chloe Culpin reporting for Insight.
Well, to discuss this further, I'm joined by Dr. Jeremy Hagger, Professor of Agroecology at the Natural Resources Institute from the University of Greenwich here in the UK. Dr. Hagger, thanks very much indeed for joining it. Well, looking at that report, the radar's been out on the fate of avocado production for a while, but looking at that report, are we overstating the dangers of avocado production, or is this a fast-approaching crisis?
I think it's symptomatic of what's happening across the agriculture sector for most commodities. Obviously, growing world population and increasingly prosperous world and growing middle class is increasing the demand for most agricultural commodities. And what we're seeing with the avocado is a function of that. You could say the same for coffee or cocoa or many other commodities that have increasing demand. And obviously that consumer demand means more needs to be produced, and there's environmental impacts of expanding production.
Okay, so the big picture is the world is starting to struggle to provide enough food
Yep.
for its population, and a population that's growing exponentially pretty fast. So that's one issue which needs an international big picture look at how we balance that out. And as you said, there's also soybeans, there's production of beef. The list is almost endless. And then there are individual stories. So it mentioned in the report there, 50 countries pretty much grow avocados, but some of those have more chaotic political situations than others, and so presumably that exacerbates the situation.
Yes, certainly. So, I mean, if you want to try to bring in regulations, say, to improve the sustainability of production, to regulate, say, avocado not being grown in areas that are forest, etc., that requires the rule of law, and obviously that's what's lacking in the Mexican case. And you need strong institutions to be able to determine where it is appropriate to grow a crop and under what conditions, and where that's not appropriate.
Right, so someone who's not very well experienced in the world of farming might decide, and I've seen similar things with beef production in the Amazon, in fact, might decide, yes, I'm going to go into business doing this, and actually they're onto a loser anyway because they won't manage it properly, but they will end up having a poor effect on the land that they're farming.
Yes, I mean, usually the farmer going into that will get some short-term benefit and probably have very limited options in terms of other activities that they could, or other crops that they could grow to gain an economic return. And so, yes, farmers tend to go for, if you like, the product that has the greatest demand, or the sort of the latest fad in the market, and try to produce that because they can see that there's a market demand for it. Without necessarily understanding what the long-term consequences are.
How destructive is the growing of avocado plants if handled poorly?
Well, I think the problem with the avocado is it's been taken out of where the habitat, so to speak, where it would grow naturally, which is in the highland areas of Central America and Mexico, but with much higher rainfall, where you sort of a moist forest environment, and is being taken into these semi-arid areas. In Chile or California or Israel or other regions of Mexico, where for it to grow, it has to be grown with irrigation. Now, with irrigation, it grows very well and is very productive and very economically, and probably has fewer pest problems, etc., than if you're growing it in sort of its more natural environment. But that is part of that is one of the consequences of taking it out of its natural environment, is that obviously you're having to supplement what it's missing there, water primarily, in order to be able to grow it.
And on the other side, on the consumer side, of course, with this vast expansion of social media, the popularity of cooking shows, recipe shows, and so on, everyone's looking for the new fad, the new superfood. The poor blueberry was in the firing line, I suppose, for a while, and there have been others as well, and now it's the avocado. How much responsibility can we land at the door of people who are creating these fads for particular foods and encouraging people to start consuming them in a far sudden and far higher amount than they would have done previously?
Well, I think the farmers need economic alternatives, and they want to improve their livelihoods, and so I don't think we should put a cap on the demand per se. I think what needs to be done is to try to ensure that that demand is being met in a sustainable way. And that's something that's been undertaken quite substantially in other sectors like coffee and cocoa and tea, where sustainability standards have been brought in.
Coffee, cocoa, and tea are more staples. The popularity of those is regular and consistent and predictable in a way, isn't it? But now, what happens in the West now? All of a sudden, olive oil, suddenly it's olives, and then it's blueberries, and then it's acai seeds, and then it's something else. Right. This is a sort of almost predatory shopping habit, which is en masse because of social media in very large numbers coming out of Europe and America.
Yes, well, I mean, that's causing a boost or a peak in demand for those products. But I think this, after the fad has passed, it kind of levels off a bit to a more sustained level of production. And I think that's probably what you need to focus on more than more than the short-term fad. And hopefully you're converting a set of consumers to this new product who will, most of whom or some of whom will stay with it. An avocado is an ancient product. There's always been a substantial demand for it, and is an important, within the countries where it's produced, is an important food crop. So yes, there's this additional demand, but it is a stable
Okay,
alternative.
one last question then. Looking at the sort of the facts and figures around the avocado, is it worth all the trouble? Is it really such a special fruit?
Well, you'd have to ask the nutritionists about that. I mean, you've probably read the same literature as me. It certainly sounds very good, and it is part of the traditional diet of many Central American families, and for smallholders, it is a nutritionally important component of their diet. For people who don't necessarily have access to higher quality meat and well, eggs perhaps, but having an avocado together with your rice and beans substantially improves the quality of that diet at a local level.
You're making my mouth water. Dr. Hager, thanks very much indeed for joining us here on Insight today.
You're welcome.
Well, we end with our Insight Bite, a little something we feel that you should know. Today we turn our attention 115 metres upwards to the top of the Melia Barcelona Sky Hotel, where 55-year-old French daredevil Alain Robert, dubbed the French Spider-Man, has scaled one of the tallest skyscrapers in that Spanish city, all without a harness. Bystanders and police watched in awe from the ground as Robert successfully conquered one of his most dangerous climbs to date. The urban climber is famous for his daredevil harness-free approach to scuttling up buildings with nothing more than some chalk on his hands and climbing shoes on his feet. That's all for now. I'm Andrew Wilson. That was Insight.